The Galactic Council Chamber was the largest structure ever built in known space. It floated in the void between three dead stars. Inside this massive station, 10,000 species gathered today. Representatives from every corner of the galaxy stood in their designated platforms. The air buzzed with translation devices working overtime. But today nobody needed translation for what they were feeling. Today every species felt the same emotion. Victory. The holographic display at the center of the chamber showed a planet. Earth. The human homeworld. Or what was left of it. The planet burned. Continents cracked like broken glass. Oceans boiled into steam. Cities that once held billions now existed as glowing craters. The Zeltharian Empire had done what many thought impossible. They had destroyed humanity. Admiral Kreth of the Zeltharian fleet stood at his platform with all four arms raised high. His scales gleamed under the chamber lights. Pride radiated from every inch of his massive form. The other species watched him with a mixture of respect and fear. The Zeltharians were the galaxy's strongest military power. They had just proven it again. The Supreme Chancellor called for silence. The chamber obeyed immediately. Even with 10,000 species present, you could hear the hum of the station's engines. The Chancellor was of Ortani, an ancient species that had guided the Council for 3 million years. Her voice carried weight that transcended mere authority. When she spoke, reality itself seemed to pause and listen. She addressed the chamber with words that would be remembered forever. She declared that the human problem was solved. The threat was eliminated. Earth was gone. Humanity was extinct. Peace would return to the galaxy. The species that had worried about human expansion could rest easy now. Those who feared human unpredictability could sleep without nightmares. The age of human chaos was over. The chamber erupted in celebration. Cheers in 1,000 different languages filled the air. Some species stomped their feet. Others released bioluminescent displays of joy. A few even fired ceremonial weapons into the shielded ceiling. Admiral Kreth began his victory speech. He told the Council how easy it had been. How the human fleet scattered like frightened animals. How Earth's defenses crumbled in mere hours. How the humans sent desperate messages begging for mercy. Messages that went unanswered. Messages that were deleted. He laughed as he described the final moments. The way human ships tried to shield their homeworld with their own bodies. The way they failed. He called humans weak. Primitive. Nothing special. Just another species that reached too far too fast. Just another civilization that thought it could stand among the great powers. Just another mistake that the galaxy had corrected. The Council members nodded in agreement. Many had never trusted the humans. These strange bipedal creatures who asked too many questions. Who refused to follow the old ways. Who demanded equality when they had not earned it. Who spoke of rights and freedoms like those concepts mattered in the cold mathematics of galactic power. But then something changed. A technician from the Murlac species noticed it first. His 6 eyes focused on a secondary monitor. His breathing appendages quickened. He tried to speak, but fear locked his throat. The signal appeared on his screen. A signal from deep space. Not from any known system. Not from any charted territory. Just numbers counting down. The technician finally found his voice. He alerted his supervisor. The supervisor checked the readings and went pale. Well, as pale as a being made of crystalline matter could go. The alert spread through the station's command center. Then to the Council chamber itself. The celebration died like a candle in vacuum. Everyone turned to look at the new holographic display. The countdown read 7 minutes and decreasing. Nobody knew what it meant. Nobody knew where it came from. But every species in that chamber felt something they had not felt in a very long time. Primal fear. The Supreme Chancellor demanded answers. The science teams worked frantically. Ships were dispatched to investigate the signal's origin. But the countdown continued. 6 minutes. 5 minutes. The Council chamber grew silent again. This time the silence was different. This was not the silence of respect. This was the silence of prey animals who sense a predator but cannot see it. Admiral Kreth tried to maintain his composure. He declared that this was probably just a malfunction. Perhaps a human desperation weapon that would fail to activate. Perhaps nothing at all. But his voice lacked the confidence it held moments ago. His scales had lost some of their gleam. 3 minutes remained. Sensor arrays across the galaxy began reporting anomalies. Ships detecting strange readings. Gravity fluctuations in empty space. Energy signatures that matched no known technology. 2 minutes. Some council members began leaving their platforms. Panic spread like fire through dry grass. The Supreme Chancellor called for calm, but her own voice wavered. 1 minute remained on the countdown. Every screen in the council chamber showed the same numbers decreasing. Every species watched in hypnotized horror. 30 seconds. 20 seconds. 10 seconds. Admiral Kreth gripped his platform with all 4 arms. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Nothing happened. For exactly 3 seconds nothing happened. Then the sensors went mad. Every detection system in the galaxy screamed warnings simultaneously. Something was coming. Something massive. Something that had been invisible until this exact moment. Something that had been watching. Something that had been waiting. Something that was no longer hiding. Deep in the darkness between stars something moved. The void itself seemed to ripple. Space bent in ways that violated physics. And Admiral Kreth realized with growing horror that humanity had just sent a message. Not a message of defeat. A message of introduction. The real war was about to begin. The countdown had reached 03 hours ago. In that time, the Galactic Council had sent 47 communication requests to the Zeltharian home system. Every single request went unanswered. This was unprecedented. The Zeltharian Empire never went silent. Their communication networks were the most advanced in the galaxy. They had backup systems for their backup systems. They had maintained constant contact with the Council for over 2,000 years without a single interruption. Until today. The Supreme Chancellor stood in the Emergency Command Center. Her ancient face showed emotions that few had ever witnessed. Fear mixed with confusion mixed with something worse. The creeping realization that perhaps the galaxy had made a terrible mistake. She ordered the deployment of the Council's scout fleet. 20 of the fastest ships available. Their mission was simple. Travel to the Zeltharian home system. Find out why the communications stopped. Report back immediately. The scouts jumped to hyperspace within minutes. The journey would take 4 hours. The Council would wait. Those 4 hours felt like 4 years. Speculation ran wild through the Council chamber. Some species claimed this was clearly a technical malfunction. The Zeltharians probably experienced a solar flare that disrupted their networks. Others were not so optimistic. They remembered the strange countdown. They remembered the sensor readings that made no sense. They remembered that humans had a reputation for being unpredictable, dangerous when cornered, creative in ways that terrified more structured civilizations. Admiral Kreth remained in his quarters. He refused to speak to anyone. His aides reported that he sat motionless staring at a blank wall. Even for a Zeltharian, this behavior was abnormal. When asked if he wanted food, he did not respond. When asked if he needed medical attention, he did not respond. He simply sat and stared as if watching something invisible that only he could see. Something that filled him with dread. The 4 hours passed. The scout fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Zeltharian home system. What they found would haunt them for the rest of their lives. The system looked normal at first glance. The star burned with its usual intensity. The planets orbited in their expected paths. The massive ring of defensive stations circled the inner worlds like they always had. But something was wrong. Terribly wrong. There was no activity. No ship movements. No energy signatures from the stations. No radio chatter. No heat signatures from the cities on the planets below. Nothing. Just silence. The kind of silence that exists in tombs. The scout captain was a veteran named Thorol. He had seen wars and disasters and cosmic horrors. But this silence made his blood cold. He ordered his fleet to approach slowly. Weapons ready. Shields at maximum. They moved deeper into the system. The first ships they encountered were Zeltharian battlecruisers, massive vessels that could crack planets. They floated dead in space, their running lights dark, their engines cold, their hulls intact. No damage, no burn marks, no signs of battle. Just empty metal coffins drifting in the void. Thorol ordered a boarding party. His best soldiers put on their suits and crossed to the nearest battlecruiser. They forced open an airlock and entered. The interior lights still functioned on emergency power. The air was breathable. The temperature normal. Everything looked operational. Except for one detail. There was no crew. 3,000 Zeltharians should have been on that ship. Soldiers and engineers and officers. All gone. Not dead. Not killed. Simply gone. The boarding party searched every deck, every room, every storage compartment. They found personal belongings. Half-eaten meals in the cafeteria. Duty logs that ended mid-sentence. But no bodies. No blood. No signs of struggle. Just empty corridors and the echo of boots on metal floors. The scout fleet checked 17 more ships. All the same. Crews vanished. Systems operational. No explanation. Thorol felt his composure cracking. He had to report this. He had to tell the council. But first he needed to check the planets. Maybe the crews evacuated there. Maybe they fled to the surface. Maybe there was a logical explanation. His fleet approached the primary world. The Zeltharian homeworld. A planet of 12 billion souls. The cities were dark. The spaceports empty. The orbital elevators motionless. They sent drones to the surface. The drones transmitted images that made no sense. Streets full of abandoned vehicles. Buildings with doors left open. Parks with children's toys scattered on the ground. Markets with food still on the shelves. But no people. 12 billion Zeltharians simply gone. Vanished as if they never existed. Thorol's communications officer noticed something. A recording beacon floating near the fourth planet. It was human technology. Ancient human technology. The kind used centuries ago. The beacon transmitted a single message on repeat. Thorol ordered it played. The message was audio only. A human voice. Male. Speaking in perfect galactic common. The voice said just one sentence. You touched soul. Now soul touches you. Then the message repeated. Over and over. You touched soul. Now soul touches you. Thorol understood immediately. This was not a malfunction. This was not an accident. This was a demonstration. A message written in the disappearance of 3,000 ships and 12 billion people. Humanity was not extinct. Humanity was not defeated. Humanity was hunting. He ordered his fleet to leave the system immediately. Jump to hyperspace. Run back to council space. Report everything. As they prepared to jump, their sensors detected something. A ripple in space. The same ripple from the countdown. Something was uncloaking. Something enormous. Something that had been watching them this entire time. Thorol's last glimpse before the jump was of a ship. No, not a ship. A fleet. Hundreds of vessels materializing from nothing. Human vessels. Silent. Dark. Massive beyond reason. Then hyperspace took his fleet away. But the image remained burned in his mind. Humanity had not died. Humanity had been preparing. And now they were coming. The scout fleet returned to council space in chaos. 3 ships had suffered complete system failures during the emergency jump. Their crews were alive but traumatized, speaking in broken sentences about ghosts and shadows and eyes watching from the void. Captain Thorol made his report directly to the Supreme Chancellor. He showed the recordings. The empty ships. The abandoned worlds. The human message beacon. The brief sensor glimpse of the massive fleet that appeared just as they escaped. The council chamber fell into stunned silence. This silence lasted exactly 12 seconds. Then panic erupted. Species representatives shouted over each other. Some demanded immediate military mobilization. Others called for peace negotiations. A few simply left their platforms and fled the station entirely. The Supreme Chancellor raised her crystalline hand. The gesture took several minutes to restore order. When she finally spoke, her voice carried a weight of terrible understanding. She said that the Council had gravely miscalculated. Humanity was not extinct. Humanity had never been in danger of extinction. Everything that happened at Earth was not their ending. It was humanity's beginning. The Chancellor ordered the historical archives opened. She demanded every piece of information about humanity. Every interaction. Every treaty. Every conflict. Every observation. The data collectors worked through the night. What they found painted a disturbing picture. Humanity had arrived in Council space 247 years ago. They had been friendly, eager to trade, willing to share technology. They asked for one thing in return: to be left alone to develop at their own pace. The Council had agreed. On the surface. But secret reports told a different story. The Council had been watching humanity closely. Too closely. They saw how fast humans learned. How quickly they adapted alien technology. How they improved on designs that had remained unchanged for millennia. How they asked questions that made ancient species uncomfortable. Questions about why the Council operated the way it did. Questions about who really held power. Questions about the disappeared species that were no longer mentioned in official histories. The Vortani elders had made a decision 73 years ago. A classified decision. A decision that only the highest council members knew. They decided humanity was a potential threat. Not an immediate threat. Not a military threat. Something worse. An ideological threat. Humans spoke of democracy. Of individual rights. Of questioning authority. These concepts were dangerous. The galaxy had been stable for millions of years precisely because most species accepted their place in the hierarchy. Humans refused to accept. They encouraged other species to refuse. Small rebellions began appearing in council space. Minor species demanding representation. Workers demanding better conditions. All influenced by human philosophy. The Council could not allow this to spread, so they created a plan. They would use the Zeltharian Empire as their weapon. They would engineer a conflict between humans and Zeltharians. They would ensure humanity was destroyed. They would blame it on the Zeltharians. The plan was elegant, simple, foolproof, except it was not. What the Council did not know was that humanity had been preparing. For 2 centuries humanity had been building something in secret. Far beyond council space in the dark regions between spiral arms. Regions that were considered uninhabitable. Regions where sensors did not work properly. Regions that no species bothered to explore. Humanity had found those regions perfect. They established hidden stations. Massive construction facilities. Entire colonies that existed off every official map. They harvested resources from rogue planets and dead systems. They recruited the best minds from Earth and her colonies. Scientists, engineers, strategists, people who understood that the galaxy was not as peaceful as it pretended. People who knew that humanity would eventually face an existential threat. People who decided to prepare for that day. The project was called Ghost Protocol. The name was fitting. They built ships unlike anything the galaxy had seen. Ships that used quantum displacement fields to bend light around their hulls. Perfect invisibility. Ships that could mask their gravity signatures. Ships that left no heat trail in space. Ships that were functionally undetectable by any known sensor technology. But invisibility was just the beginning. These ships carried weapons that council scientists thought were impossible. Quantum disruptors that could tear apart molecular bonds. Graviton lances that could crush a battleship into a singularity. Nanite swarms that could disassemble entire fleets at the atomic level. Humanity had spent 200 years studying every species in the galaxy. Learning their weaknesses. Understanding their technologies. Planning for every possible scenario. They were not building a defense fleet. They were building an extinction protocol. The Ghost Protocol fleet numbered over 100,000 ships. Capital vessels the size of small moons. Destroyers that moved faster than anything in Council space. Support craft carrying technologies that would revolutionize warfare. All of it hidden. All of it waiting. Billions of humans lived in those hidden colonies. People who had never seen Earth. People born and raised in the dark between stars. People who trained their entire lives for a mission they prayed would never come. But the mission came. When Earth burned, those billions of hidden humans learned that their worst fears had become reality. The Council had tried to erase them. To delete humanity from the galaxy. It was the Council's greatest mistake. Because humanity had learned patience. They had learned silence. They had learned to think in centuries rather than years. And most importantly, they had learned to strike without warning. Now the Supreme Chancellor understood. The empty Zeltharian worlds were not the attack. They were the warning. Humanity was demonstrating their capabilities. Showing the galaxy what they could do. 12 billion people removed without a trace. Without violence. Without death. Simply relocated to somewhere unknown. It was mercy and threat combined. A message that said we could have killed them but we chose not to. A message that said imagine what we could do if we stopped being merciful. The Chancellor looked at the data streams showing fleet movements across the galaxy. Every species was mobilizing. Every military was preparing. But she knew the truth. She knew with absolute certainty. If humanity wanted them dead, they would already be dead. The ghosts were no longer hiding. The question now was what humanity wanted, and whether the galaxy could survive giving it to them. The Draxian Empire made their position clear within hours of the Zeltharian disappearance. Their supreme overlord addressed the galaxy through every available channel. He was a towering figure even among his own species. His exoskeleton gleamed with battle scars from 1,000 conflicts. His voice carried the arrogance of a species that had never known defeat. He declared that the Draxians would not be intimidated by human tricks. He called the Zeltharian disappearance a cowardly act of terrorism. He stated that if humanity wanted war, the Draxians would give them war. He reminded the galaxy that the Draxian fleet had crushed 17 species in the last millennium. That Draxian warriors were bred for combat from birth. That their weapons could shatter worlds. He laughed at the idea that invisible ships could defeat superior numbers and firepower. He gave humanity 24 hours to reveal themselves and surrender. Or face complete annihilation. The galaxy watched and waited. Some species admired Draxian courage. Others called it stupidity. The Supreme Chancellor tried to contact the Draxian overlord privately. Tried to counsel caution. Tried to explain that humanity had demonstrated capabilities beyond anything previously seen. The overlord refused her counsel. He said the Vortani had grown weak with age. That the council had become soft and afraid. That real warriors did not negotiate with terrorists. He cut the communication and ordered his fleets to battle positions. The Draxian Empire controlled 12 star systems. Their military numbered over 50,000 warships. Their planetary defenses could withstand anything short of a supernova. They had held their territory for 3,000 years against all challengers. The Overlord was confident. Completely confident. That confidence lasted exactly 24 hours and 17 minutes. The Draxian home system of Draxus Prime was a fortress. The central star was surrounded by 3 habitable worlds and 2 massive asteroid belts that had been converted into weapons platforms. Millions of automated defense satellites orbited in complex patterns. Early warning systems extended to the edge of the system. Nothing could approach undetected. Or so they believed. On the 25th hour after the Overlord's declaration, something impossible happened. The star went dark. Not dimmed. Not obscured by a natural phenomenon. Simply dark. As if someone had thrown a switch and turned it off. The 3 planets plunged into sudden night. Emergency lighting activated across the worlds. Billions of Draxians looked up at their sky in confusion and terror. Their sun was gone. In its place was a wall of darkness. A wall that blocked out every star. A wall that seemed to absorb all light. The defense systems went insane. Alarms screamed across every frequency. But the sensors could not identify what was happening. They detected nothing. Just empty space where their star should be. Then the wall moved. And the Draxians understood. It was not a wall. It was ships. Thousands upon thousands of ships uncloaking simultaneously. Human vessels arranged in a perfect sphere around their star. So many ships that they blocked out the sun itself. Each ship was massive. Larger than anything in the Draxian fleet. Their hulls were black. Not painted black. Black in a way that seemed to drink in light and refuse to release it. They hung there in silence. No weapons charged. No communications sent. Just presence. Overwhelming. Undeniable. Terrifying presence. The Draxian military command tried to respond. They launched their defensive fleet. 50,000 warships rising from their ports and bases. Moving to engage the enemy. Ready to show these humans the meaning of Draxian power. They never got the chance. The human ships did not move. Did not maneuver. Did not even orient themselves toward the approaching fleet. They simply activated their weapons. There was no sound in space, but if there had been, it would have been a hum. A deep thrumming vibration that seemed to resonate in the bones of every living thing in the system. The human ships fired. Not lasers. Not missiles. Not plasma. Something else. Something that made space itself ripple. Quantum disruptors. The weapons hit the Draxian fleet and reality broke. Ships did not explode. They came apart. Not torn or shattered. Simply unmade. Molecular bonds dissolved. Atoms separated. Matter returned to its component particles. Within 3 seconds, half the Draxian fleet ceased to exist. Not destroyed. Erased. The remaining ships tried to flee. Some attempted to jump to hyperspace. Their jump drives activated, but nothing happened. The human ships had somehow locked down the entire system. Space itself was frozen. No escape was possible. The Draxians broadcast surrender signals. Emergency channels flooded with pleas for mercy. The human fleet stopped firing. The sudden silence was more terrifying than the attack. A single transmission came from the human fleet. Audio only. A woman's voice. Calm. Cold. Speaking in perfect Draxian language. She identified herself as Admiral Elena Vasquez, commander of the United Human Expeditionary Fleet. She stated that the Draxian Empire had allied with those who destroyed Earth, had supported the genocide of 8 billion humans, had laughed at human suffering, had threatened humanity with annihilation. She paused. The pause lasted exactly 10 seconds. Then she continued. She said that humanity could erase every Draxian in existence, could make their species a forgotten memory, could turn their worlds into lifeless rocks. But humanity was not the council. Humanity did not kill without purpose. Humanity offered terms. Total surrender. Disarmament of all military vessels. Full cooperation with human authority. And one additional demand. Every species that had allied with the Zeltharians or supported Earth's destruction would be identified. Would be catalogued. Would be added to the list. The Draxian overlord had no choice. His pride meant nothing against extinction. He accepted every term. Within hours the Draxian fleet was powered down. Their weapons disabled. Their shields dropped. The human ships remained in position around the sun, still blocking its light, still demonstrating that they could end Draxian civilization with a thought. Admiral Vasquez broadcast one final message, this time to the entire galaxy. Every species heard it. Every government recorded it. Every citizen across 1 million worlds listened. She said that humanity had spent 2 centuries preparing for this moment. That the Ghost Fleet was only a fraction of human capability. That 40 more species were on the target list. That each had exactly 48 hours to surrender those responsible for Earth's destruction. Or face the reaping. The message ended. The human fleet around Draxus Prime began to move. Not away. Deeper into council space. The hunt had begun. And the galaxy finally understood. Humanity was not seeking conquest. They were seeking justice. And nothing would stop them from collecting it. 3 days had passed since the Draxian surrender. In that time, 16 more species had capitulated without a single shot fired. The pattern was always the same. Human fleets would appear in their systems. Massive, silent, overwhelming. They would decloak around strategic assets, military bases, government centers, shipyards. Then they would wait. The message was clear. Surrender or disappear like the Zeltharians. Most chose surrender. But the galaxy wanted answers. They wanted to understand who was leading this impossible fleet, who had orchestrated 2 centuries of secret preparation, who commanded the ghosts that now haunted every corner of Council space. The Supreme Chancellor sent daily requests for communication, begging for dialogue, pleading for negotiation. The requests went unanswered, until the 4th day, when humanity finally spoke. Every communication device in the galaxy activated simultaneously. Planetary broadcasts, personal terminals, military channels, emergency systems, everything. Billions of beings across thousands of worlds stopped what they were doing, because the signal was impossible to ignore. It overrode everything. It demanded attention. The screens showed a woman. Human. She sat in what appeared to be a command chair. Behind her stretched a massive viewscreen showing stars and the darkness between them. She wore a simple uniform. Dark blue. No decorations except a single patch on her shoulder. A ghost rendered in silver thread. Her face was weathered. Lines etched deep around her eyes and mouth. Her hair was gray, cut short, military style. But her eyes were what made every viewer pause. They were ancient, tired, yet burning with an intensity that transcended mere anger. This was a woman who had seen too much, endured too much, and decided that enough was enough. She spoke. Her voice was calm, almost gentle, the kind of voice a teacher might use, or a parent. But underneath that calm was steel, was certainty, was absolute conviction. She began by introducing herself. Admiral Elena Vasquez, commander of the United Human Expeditionary Fleet. She stated her age, 287 years old. She explained that she had been 23 when the Ghost Protocol began, had volunteered for the hidden colonies, had spent her entire adult life preparing for a war she prayed would never come. She paused. Let that information sink in. 264 years of preparation. Generations of humans who lived and died in secret. Building, planning, waiting. The galaxy had thought humanity was young, impulsive, short-lived. They were wrong. Humanity knew patience, knew sacrifice, knew how to play the long game. Admiral Vasquez continued. She told the galaxy about Earth. Not strategic information, not military data. She told them about people. She showed images. Children playing in parks. Families gathering for meals. Artists creating beauty. Scientists making discoveries. Billions of ordinary lives. Lives spent hoping for a future. Lives that believed the galaxy was a place where different species could coexist peacefully. She let the images play for 30 seconds. Then she showed what happened. Earth burning. Cities vaporizing. Oceans boiling. 8 billion souls screaming into the void as their world died. She did not look away from the camera. Did not let the viewers look away. She made them watch. Made them witness what the Council had authorized. What the Zeltharians had executed. What 43 other species had supported or celebrated. The images stopped. The Admiral's face returned. Her expression had not changed. Still calm. Still gentle. But her eyes promised reckoning. She explained what happened after Earth died. How the hidden colonies received the news. How billions of humans in the dark between stars learned that their worst nightmare had come true. How children who had never seen Earth wept for a world they only knew from stories. How engineers and soldiers and scientists who had dedicated their lives to prevention realized they had failed. But humanity did not break. Humanity did not surrender. Humanity did something the Council never anticipated. They adapted. The Admiral showed footage from the hidden colonies. Massive construction bays building ships. Training facilities where humans prepared for combat. Research labs developing weapons that violated every known law of physics. Generation after generation working toward a single goal. Not conquest. Not expansion. Justice. She stated clearly that humanity had no interest in ruling the galaxy. No desire to replace the Council. No intention of becoming the next great empire. Humanity wanted one thing. Accountability. The Admiral's tone shifted. Became harder. She addressed the Supreme Chancellor directly. Called her by name. Asked if the Chancellor truly believed the attack on Earth was unauthorized. If she really thought the Zeltharians acted alone. The Admiral smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. She told the galaxy that humanity had spent 2 centuries studying Council politics. Had infiltrated communication networks. Had agents embedded in governments across known space. Had collected evidence. Mountains of evidence. She began displaying documents. Classified orders. Secret communications. Meeting minutes from Council sessions that were supposed to be sealed forever. Evidence that showed the Council had authorized Earth's destruction. Had planned it. Had executed it as a test of their power. Had intended to blame rogue elements if questions arose. Had never expected humanity to survive. The documents played across every screen in the galaxy. Irrefutable. Undeniable. The Supreme Chancellor's own signature on orders to eliminate the human threat. The Vortani elders discussing how to dispose of a species that asked too many questions. 43 other species contributing resources or intelligence or support. All of it documented. All of it preserved. All of it now public. The Admiral let the evidence speak for itself. Let the galaxy process what it was seeing. Let them understand the scope of the conspiracy. Then she delivered her ultimatum. Every species involved had 48 hours. They would surrender those who gave the orders. Those who authorized the attack. Those who celebrated Earth's destruction. They would hand them over to human custody. They would face trial. They would answer for their crimes. Or their worlds would go dark. Not destroyed. Not burned like Earth. Simply emptied. The populations relocated to unknown locations. Left alive but scattered. Their civilizations erased from the map. The Admiral stood. Behind her the view screen changed. It showed the human fleet. Hundreds of thousands of ships. All uncloaking at once. Showing their positions. They surrounded Council space. They were everywhere. In every major system. Near every homeworld. Around every strategic location. They had been there all along. Watching. Waiting. The Admiral stated that this was not a negotiation. This was not a request. This was justice. Humanity had been patient. Had given the galaxy 2 centuries to be better. To do better. The galaxy had failed. Now humanity would ensure it never failed again. The transmission ended. But the final image remained burned into every viewer's mind. Admiral Elena Vasquez standing before her fleet. A woman who had spent nearly 3 centuries preparing for this moment. A woman who would not stop. Could not stop. Would not rest until every person responsible for Earth's destruction faced consequences. The galaxy had 48 hours. The countdown had begun. The 48-hour countdown began the moment Admiral Vasquez's transmission ended. Across the galaxy governments went into emergency session. Military commands activated crisis protocols. Citizens flooded into streets demanding answers. The careful order that the Council had maintained for millions of years fractured in minutes. Panic spread like a virus jumping from system to system. Species that had lived peacefully for millennia turned on each other. Accusations flew. Old alliances crumbled. The fabric of galactic civilization began tearing at the seams. In the Council chamber, the Supreme Chancellor faced a nightmare. Representatives screamed at her from their platforms. Some demanded she resign immediately. Others called for her arrest. A few species withdrew from the Council entirely. Declared independence. Tried to negotiate separate peace with humanity. The Chancellor raised her hands for silence, but nobody listened anymore. Her authority was gone, evaporated the moment those documents went public. The evidence Admiral Vasquez had displayed was irrefutable. Encryption signatures proved the documents were authentic. Communication logs matched perfectly with official records. Video recordings showed council members discussing Earth's destruction with casual indifference. The conspiracy was real. The genocide was planned. And 43 species had participated. Now those species faced their own populations demanding justice. Riots erupted on dozens of worlds. Citizens who had believed their governments were righteous discovered they had supported mass murder. The cognitive dissonance was too much for many. Some species experienced complete governmental collapse. Presidents and prime ministers and overlords fled their capitals. Some went into hiding. Others tried to reach human lines to surrender personally. A few chose suicide rather than face what was coming. The galaxy was eating itself from within. The Supreme Chancellor locked herself in her private chambers. She was 3.7 million years old. She had guided the Council through wars and plagues and cosmic disasters. She had seen species rise from primitive tribes to starfaring civilizations. She had witnessed the heat death of stars and the birth of new worlds. But she had never seen anything like this. Had never imagined that one species could bring the entire galactic order to its knees. She accessed the deepest archives. The files that only Vortani elders could read. Files that contained the true history of the Council. What she found there made her ancient heart grow cold. This was not the first time. The Council had eliminated species before. Dozens of them. Hundreds, maybe. Any civilization that grew too quickly. That asked too many questions. That threatened the established order. All erased. All forgotten. The official records claimed they had destroyed themselves. Or been consumed by natural disasters. Or simply vanished. But the truth was darker. The Council had been pruning the galaxy for millions of years. Maintaining control through fear and periodic culling. Humanity was supposed to be just another pruning. Another species removed before they became problematic. But the Council had made a fatal error. They had underestimated human paranoia, human preparation, human capacity for long-term planning. Most species thought in terms of years or decades, some in centuries. Humans thought in generations, in epochs. They had looked at the galaxy and seen not friends but potential threats. They had smiled and traded and built relationships, while simultaneously preparing for the day those relationships would fail. The Ghost Protocol was not a response to Earth's destruction. It was a response to the possibility of Earth's destruction. A possibility that humanity had foreseen 200 years before it happened. The Supreme Chancellor realized she was dealing with a species that had predicted the Council's actions before the Council had decided to take them. It was terrifying. She called an emergency meeting of the Inner Circle. The 12 eldest beings in the galaxy. Vortani, who had lived since the Council's founding. They gathered in a chamber that existed outside normal space. A pocket dimension where they could speak without fear of surveillance. Or so they believed. The elders were unanimous. They had to eliminate humanity. Not negotiate. Not surrender. Eliminate. They discussed using the forbidden weapons. Technologies banned for 10 million years. Planet killers. Star destroyers. Weapons that could sterilize entire sectors. They debated whether to activate the Omega Protocol. The final failsafe. A weapon that would destroy hyperspace itself. Trap every species in their home systems. End all interstellar travel forever. It would doom the galaxy to isolation. But it would stop humanity. The Supreme Chancellor listened to her peers. These ancient beings who had shaped galactic history. And realized they had learned nothing. They still believed they could control everything. Could dictate outcomes. Could eliminate threats through superior force. She asked them a simple question. If humanity had predicted the attack on Earth 200 years in advance. If they had built a fleet that remained hidden for 2 centuries. If they had infiltrated Council networks deeply enough to steal classified documents. What made the elders think humanity had not also predicted this meeting? had not planned for the Council's final desperate measures. The chamber fell silent. The implications crashed down on them like a collapsing star. If humanity knew about the forbidden weapons, if they knew about the Omega Protocol, then they had already countered them. The trap was not closing around humanity. The trap was closing around the Council. They were not the hunters. They were the prey. One of the elders accessed the weapons vault, the hidden armory where the forbidden technologies were stored. His face went pale, well as pale as a crystalline being could go. The vault was empty, not breached, not destroyed, simply empty. Every weapon gone, removed without triggering a single alarm. The Supreme Chancellor understood then. Humanity had been inside Council systems for decades, maybe centuries. They had walked through the most secure facilities in the galaxy like ghosts. They had taken everything they needed, left the Council with nothing but conventional forces. Forces that could not stand against human technology. The 48-hour deadline was not a countdown to human action. It was a countdown to Council decision. Surrender or die. There were no other options. No secret weapons to deploy. No hidden fleets to call. No ancient allies who could turn the tide. The Council had ruled the galaxy for 10 million years. Now that rule was ending. Not with a great battle. Not with heroic resistance. But with a simple choice. Face justice or face extinction. The Supreme Chancellor looked at her fellow elders. Saw the same realization in their ancient eyes. They had lost before the war even began. Humanity had beaten them 200 years ago. Everything since then was just humanity letting them come to terms with it. She opened a communication channel. Sent a message to Admiral Vasquez. 3 words. We will comply. The Supreme Chancellor's compliance message spread through Council space like wildfire. Within hours, 17 more species announced their surrender. They began compiling lists of officials who had authorized or supported Earth's destruction, preparing to hand over their leaders, their military commanders, anyone who had played a role in the genocide. But not everyone was willing to accept defeat. The Zeltharian Empire had remained silent since their population vanished. Their worlds were empty, their fleets gone. Everyone assumed they had been completely neutralized. They were wrong. Emperor Val then had not been on the homeworld when the humans came. He had been visiting a remote military station on the edge of Zeltharian space, a secret base that did not appear on any official maps. When his species vanished, he went into hiding at that base. Surrounded himself with loyalists, officers who would die before surrendering. For 3 days he watched the galaxy crumble, watched species after species bow to human demands. And he burned with rage. Emperor Val then had ruled the Zeltharian Empire for 400 years. He had crushed rebellions, conquered systems, built his species into the galaxy's premier military power. He had never retreated, never compromised, never shown weakness. The idea of surrender was incomprehensible to him. Worse than death. He would rather see the galaxy burn than admit defeat to a species he considered inferior. So he made a decision. If he was going down, he would take everyone with him. He would reveal the truth. Not just about Earth's destruction. About everything. The deepest secrets of the Council. The crimes they had hidden for millions of years. He recorded a message. Not a surrender. Not a plea. A confession. And a condemnation. He broadcast it on every frequency. Sent it to every corner of the galaxy. Made sure no one could ignore it. The Emperor appeared on screens across thousands of worlds. His scales were dull. His eyes bloodshot. He looked like a being who had not slept in days. But his voice was strong, clear, defiant. He began by admitting his role in Earth's destruction. Yes, he had ordered the attack. Yes, he had watched Earth burn. Yes, he had celebrated human deaths. But he was not the architect. He was the weapon. Someone else had pulled the trigger. The Supreme Chancellor and the Vortani elders had given the order. Had authorized the genocide. Had promised the Zeltharians territory and resources in exchange for eliminating the human problem. He showed documents to prove it. Communications between himself and the Chancellor. Transfer records for payment. Strategic plans developed by Council military advisors. Everything. But that was not the revelation that shook the galaxy. That came next. Emperor Val then revealed that Earth was not the first. The Council had been eliminating species for millions of years. Any civilization that grew too independent, too questioning, too dangerous to the established order. All removed. He named them. The Krell. The Mytharians. The Torvax Collective. Species that had supposedly destroyed themselves or fallen to natural disasters. All lies. All murdered by Council decree. He showed records from the secret archives. The ones the Supreme Chancellor thought were secure. Lists of targeted species. Execution orders. Post-elimination reports. Hundreds of civilizations erased. Their existence scrubbed from official history. Only fragments remained. Myths. Legends. Stories that no one believed were real. But they were real. They had all been real. And the Council had killed them all. The galaxy reeled. Species that had trusted the Council for millennia discovered they had been living under the rule of serial genociders. But the Emperor was not finished. He revealed the ultimate secret. The reason the Council eliminated species. It was not about maintaining peace. Not about preventing wars. It was about resources. About power. The Vortani and the Elder species had discovered something 10 million years ago. A way to extend life indefinitely. A technology that required massive amounts of exotic energy. Energy harvested from dying civilizations. From species at the peak of their development. The Council had been farming the galaxy. Letting species grow and develop. Then harvesting them when they reached optimal energy output. Using that energy to extend their own lives. To maintain their power. To rule forever. The Supreme Chancellor and the Inner Circle were not benevolent guides. They were parasites. Feeding on the galaxy. Using genocide as agriculture. The revelation broke something fundamental in galactic society. Species that had worshipped the Vortani as wise elders now saw them as monsters. Governments that had followed Council guidance for millennia questioned every decision. Every law. Every policy. Had it all been designed to farm them? To make them better prey? The trust that held the galaxy together dissolved. Civil wars erupted. Species turned on their own governments. Demanded to know who had known. Who had participated. Who had benefited from the harvesting. The Council chamber descended into chaos. Representatives attacked each other. Accusations became violence. Security forces tried to maintain order but failed. The station itself became a war zone. The Supreme Chancellor watched from her chambers as her civilization collapsed. Everything she had built, everything she had maintained, crumbling because one emperor chose honesty over surrender. Admiral Vasquez received the Emperor's broadcast. She watched it twice. Her face showed no emotion. When it ended, she sent new orders to her fleet. The mission had changed. Originally, humanity planned to arrest those responsible for Earth's destruction. Put them on trial. Show the galaxy that justice could be served without more violence. But this revelation changed everything. The corruption was deeper than anyone imagined. Older than human civilization. Removing a few officials would accomplish nothing. The entire system was diseased. Rotten to its core. The only solution was complete dismantlement. She opened a channel to the fleet. Gave new orders. Every council facility was now a target. Every government building. Every military base. Not to destroy. To occupy. Human forces would take control of council infrastructure. Would secure the archives. Would preserve evidence. And most importantly, would find the harvesting technology. The technology that had powered the Council's immortality. Powered by the deaths of countless species. The 48-hour deadline was no longer relevant. This was not about punishing individuals anymore. This was about dismantling a system that had committed genocide as policy for 10 million years. The Emperor's betrayal had given humanity something unexpected. Moral certainty. Before there had been questions. Doubts about whether total war was justified. Now those doubts were gone. The Council was not a flawed government. It was an existential threat to every species in the galaxy. And humanity would end it. Not for revenge. Not for justice. For survival. Because if the Council remained in power, they would eventually harvest humanity too. Would wait until humans reached peak development. Then eliminate them. Harvest their energy. Add them to the list of forgotten species. Admiral Vasquez would not allow that. Would not let her people become fuel for alien immortality. The war had just become total. The galaxy held its breath. 24 hours remained until Admiral Vasquez's original deadline expired. But Emperor Vulthan's revelations had changed everything. Species that were preparing to surrender now hesitated. Not because they wanted to fight. Because they did not know who to surrender to. The Council was revealed as mass murderers. But humanity was an unknown force with overwhelming power. Caught between two terrors, populations across the galaxy simply waited, hoping that somehow they would survive what was coming. Military analysts tried to predict what humanity would do. Some argued the revelations would cause humanity to negotiate, to seek allies against the Council. Others believed humanity would use the chaos to strike harder, to dismantle the Council while it was divided. None of them predicted what actually happened. Because what happened was nothing. The deadline passed. 48 hours expired. And nothing changed. Human fleets remained in their positions around key systems. Silent. Motionless. Not attacking. Not communicating. Just watching. Hours turned into a full day. Then 2 days. Then 3. The galaxy waited for the hammer to fall. For the reaping to begin. But the human ships simply floated in the void. Like monuments. Like tombstones. The psychological effect was devastating. Leaders who had prepared for battle found themselves with no enemy to fight. Citizens who had braced for destruction found themselves in suspended terror. Not knowing was worse than knowing. The uncertainty ate at everyone. Species began making mistakes. Commanders ordered attacks on phantom threats. Governments enacted emergency measures against invisible enemies. Paranoia spread faster than any weapon could. On the 5th day, the Supreme Chancellor attempted communication again. She broadcast a message directly to Admiral Vasquez. Pleaded for dialogue. Explained that she was ready to stand trial. That she would surrender herself and the inner circle. That she would open all archives. Give humanity everything they wanted. If only they would stop the silence. The message went unanswered. The human fleets did not respond. Did not acknowledge. Simply continued their vigil. The Chancellor realized then what humanity was doing. They were letting the Council destroy itself. Not through violence. Through fear. Through the weight of revealed crimes. Through the knowledge that judgment was coming but not knowing when. It was psychological warfare at its most refined. The Council was tearing itself apart while humanity watched. Then on the 7th day it began. Not with announcements. Not with warnings. Human forces simply acted. Simultaneously. Across 10,000 worlds. They moved with precision that suggested years of planning. Which of course it was. Humanity had mapped every Council facility. Every government center. Every military installation. They knew the locations. The security systems. The response times. They had been preparing this operation for decades. Now they executed it with surgical efficiency. On the Vortani homeworld, human ships descended through the atmosphere. Marines deployed in dropships. They landed at the Grand Archive, the repository of 10 million years of Council history. Security forces tried to resist. They were not killed. Human soldiers used non-lethal weapons. Stun fields. Neural disruptors. Sonic barriers. The guards collapsed unconscious. Not a single death. The humans secured the building in 17 minutes. The same scene repeated across the galaxy. Council facilities occupied. Officials taken into custody. Archives secured. Resistance met with overwhelming but non-lethal force. Humanity demonstrated capabilities that shocked military observers. Their soldiers moved through defenses like water through cracks, found paths that should not exist, disabled systems that were supposed to be impenetrable. It became clear that human infiltration had been even deeper than anyone imagined. They had backdoors in every security system, maps of every building, profiles on every official. They had been planning this operation not for months but for generations. The Council never had a chance. By the end of the first day, 3,000 facilities were under human control. By the end of the second day, the number reached 8,000. By the third day, human forces had occupied every major Council installation in known space. The Supreme Chancellor watched from her chambers as human soldiers entered the Council station. She had dismissed her guards, ordered them to stand down, knew that resistance was pointless. The humans came to her door. 6 soldiers in powered armor. They were polite, almost gentle. They informed her she was under arrest for crimes against sentient life. Asked her to come peacefully. She agreed. Walked with them through corridors she had walked for millions of years. Past chambers where she had made decisions that shaped galactic history. Knew she would never see them again. The humans took her to a transport ship. Inside were other Council members. The inner circle. All arrested. All sitting in silence, contemplating the end of everything they had built. The ship departed. Destination unknown. None of them asked where they were going. It did not matter anymore. Across the galaxy the occupation continued. But the remarkable thing was how bloodless it was. Humanity was not killing, not destroying, not even significantly injuring. They were simply taking control, removing those responsible, securing evidence. The species that had feared extinction found themselves largely untouched. Human forces ignored civilian populations, focused only on government and military targets. This restraint was more terrifying than violence would have been. It demonstrated control, demonstrated that humanity could have killed everyone but chose not to, chose mercy even for those who had shown them none. The message was clear. Humanity was not conquering. They were liberating, freeing the galaxy from a system that had preyed on it for millions of years. Within 72 hours, the operation was complete. Every Council facility occupied. Every elder arrested. Every archive secured. The galaxy woke up to a new reality. The Council that had ruled for 10 million years was gone. Dismantled in 3 days. Removed so efficiently that most citizens barely noticed until it was over. Historians would call it the Silent War. The war that was won without battles, without death tolls, without the traditional measures of military victory. Humanity had defeated the galaxy's oldest civilization not through superior violence but through superior preparation, through patience, through understanding that true power was not the ability to destroy. It was the ability to control when and where and how force was applied. And most importantly, the wisdom to know when force was not needed at all. The Council had fallen. Now came the question of what would replace it. 6 months after the Silent War ended, the galaxy received an invitation. Every species, every government, every independent colony, all were asked to send representatives to a location in neutral space. The coordinates pointed to an unremarkable system between spiral arms. A place with no resources, no strategic value, no history. When the representatives arrived, they found something unexpected. A massive station. Newly constructed. Human design but built with materials and aesthetics from thousands of species. A structure that represented not domination but collaboration. The station was called Unity. Not a subtle name, but appropriate. At its center was a chamber even larger than the old council hall, with platforms for every species, even those who had no government left, even those who had been thought extinct. This was not a trial of individuals. This was a trial of a system. The representatives gathered nervously. Many expected this to be humanity's moment of triumph, a declaration of human rule, a new empire rising from the ashes of the old. They were wrong. Admiral Vasquez stood at the central platform. She looked older than in her broadcast 6 months ago. The weight of command had carved deeper lines in her face. But her eyes remained sharp, determined. She welcomed the representatives, thanked them for coming, explained the purpose of this gathering. This was a trial, yes, but not just of the Council, of the entire galaxy, of every species that had allowed the system to function, every government that had looked away from atrocities, every citizen who had enjoyed the benefits of Council rule without questioning the cost. She stated clearly that humanity did not seek to judge alone. This trial would be conducted by all, for all. The evidence was presented over 3 weeks. Documents from the archives, testimony from survivors, recordings that had been hidden for millions of years. The representatives watched in horror as the true scope of Council crimes was revealed. 473 species eliminated over 10 million years. Trillions of beings murdered. Their energy harvested to extend Vortani life. Their civilizations erased from history. Their cultures reduced to myths. The representatives saw how the system worked. How the Council identified promising species, allowed them to develop, watched them reach technological and cultural peaks, then manufactured conflicts, engineered disasters, created reasons for intervention, and in the chaos harvested them, took their energy, added years to elder lives. The technology was displayed. The harvesting equipment, the life extension chambers, physical proof that could not be denied. But the trial did not focus only on the Council. Admiral Vasquez brought forward species that had benefited from the system, governments that had received technology in exchange for looking away, military forces that had helped suppress species asking too many questions, trade consortiums that had profited from harvested worlds. She showed how the corruption spread through the entire galaxy, how almost everyone was complicit, not directly perhaps, but through willful ignorance, through acceptance of benefits without questioning their source, through silence when speaking up was needed. The chamber fell into uncomfortable quiet. Representatives looked at each other, saw guilt reflected in alien eyes, realized that very few species were innocent. The system had not been maintained by the Council alone. It had been maintained by everyone who chose comfort over truth. The Supreme Chancellor was brought forward. She had aged visibly even though Vortani aging was nearly imperceptible. She stood before the assembled galaxy, heard the charges read against her. Crimes against sentient life on a scale that dwarfed any war or disaster in recorded history. She was asked if she had anything to say. She spoke for 2 hours, did not deny anything, did not make excuses, simply explained how the system began, how the first Vortani elders discovered the harvesting technology, how they convinced themselves it was necessary, that extending their lives meant preserving wisdom, that guiding younger species required experience that only immortality could provide, how one justified atrocity led to another, how evil became normalized over millions of years, how eventually they stopped seeing the harvested as people, just resources, fuel, numbers in a ledger. She wept as she spoke, crystalline tears that evaporated in the chamber's atmosphere. She admitted that she deserved death, that they all did. The inner circle, the enforcers, the beneficiaries, all of them. Admiral Vasquez listened to the confession, then asked a question that surprised everyone. She asked the galaxy what punishment would serve justice. Not revenge. Justice. Killing the Council members would be easy, satisfying perhaps. But would it change anything? Would it prevent future atrocities? Would it heal the wounds? Would it restore the lost civilizations? The chamber erupted in discussion. Representatives debated for days. Some demanded execution. Others suggested imprisonment. A few argued for exile. But slowly a consensus emerged. Not from humanity. From the other species. From governments that had to face their own complicity. They proposed something different. Something harder than death. The Council members would live. But they would serve. Spend the rest of their extended lives working to rebuild what they had destroyed. Researching the lost species. Recovering their histories. Teaching the galaxy about the civilizations that had been erased. They would become living monuments to their crimes. Reminders of what happened when power was unchecked. The verdict was unanimous. The Supreme Chancellor and the Inner Circle accepted it. They had no choice. But more importantly, they seemed almost relieved. Death would have been escape. This was actual justice. Actual consequence. They were led away to begin their sentence. But the trial was not over. Because now came the harder question. What came next? The Council was gone. The old system dismantled. But the galaxy still needed governance. Still needed coordination between species. Still needed someone to mediate disputes and facilitate trade and maintain peace. Admiral Vasquez addressed this directly. She stated that humanity would not rule. Would not become the new council. Would not accept the mantle of galactic authority. The galaxy had suffered enough under centralized power. Under rulers who claimed to know what was best for everyone. The new system would be different. She proposed a federation. A true federation. Not the council's puppet show, but actual democracy. Every species with representation proportional to population. Decisions made by vote, not decree. Power distributed, not concentrated. Transparency required, not hidden. And most importantly, limits. Term limits for leaders. Oversight committees with real authority. Regular reviews of policy. Mechanisms for species to leave if they chose. A system designed not to concentrate power but to diffuse it. Designed not to last forever but to evolve. Designed with the understanding that no system was perfect. That corruption would always be a risk. That eternal vigilance was required. She asked the representatives to consider it. To discuss with their governments. To propose changes and improvements. This was not humanity's gift to the galaxy. This was the galaxy's opportunity to build something better together. The trial ended. The representatives returned to their worlds. Carried with them the evidence. The testimonies. The proposed federation structure. The galaxy debated for months. Argued. Revised. Improved. And eventually voted. The new Galactic Federation was established. Not perfect. Not without problems. But honest. Transparent. Democratic. Built on the ashes of the old system with full knowledge of what happened when power went unchecked. Admiral Vasquez attended the inauguration. Watched as the first elected representatives took their positions. Smiled for the first time in years. Her mission was complete. Earth was avenged. The system was reformed. The galaxy had a chance. She resigned her commission that day. Returned to the colonies. To the hidden stations where she had spent most of her life. She was 288 years old. She was tired. But she was satisfied. Humanity had not become monsters. Had not let revenge turn them into the thing they fought. They had chosen justice. Chosen rebuilding. Chosen hope. And the galaxy was better for it. 1 year after the trial, the galaxy was unrecognizable. The transformation happened faster than anyone expected. Species that had barely spoken to each other for millennia now collaborated on projects that would have been impossible under council rule. Trade routes expanded. Cultural exchanges flourished. Technology sharing became common rather than controlled. The fear that had governed galactic relations for so long began to fade. Replaced not with naive trust but with cautious optimism. The understanding that cooperation served everyone better than the old hierarchies. The new Galactic Federation held its first annual assembly at Unity Station. Representatives arrived from over 8,000 species. Some were familiar faces from the old council. Others were newly contacted civilizations that humanity had found in the hidden records. Species the council had planned to harvest but never got around to. They were warned. Given the history. Offered full membership and protection. Most accepted gratefully. The assembly addressed practical matters. Establishing unified communication protocols. Coordinating scientific research. Managing shared resources in neutral space. Boring administrative work that was nevertheless essential. But it also did something the Council never did. It acknowledged mistakes. When disputes arose between species, the Federation did not impose solutions. It facilitated dialogue. When policies failed, they were revised publicly rather than hidden. When officials were found corrupt, they were removed and prosecuted regardless of species or status. The system was messy, slow, frustrating at times. But it was honest. And that honesty made all the difference. Species began to trust again. Not blindly, but enough to work together. Enough to build something better than what came before. Earth was being rebuilt. The project involved thousands of species contributing resources and labor. Not because they were forced. Because they wanted to. Guilt motivated some. Genuine desire to help motivated others. Human colonies welcomed the assistance. Designed the new Earth not as it was, but as it could be. A monument to resilience. To survival. To the idea that even the worst destruction could be overcome. The oceans were being restored using Aquarian terraforming technology. The atmosphere cleaned with Vexalian filtration systems. The continents reshaped by Draxian geoengineers working alongside human architects. It would take decades to complete. Maybe centuries. But it was happening. The dead world was coming back to life. Children born in the hidden colonies would finally see the homeworld their grandparents had lost. Admiral Elena Vasquez lived quietly in a small station orbiting a red dwarf. She refused all requests for interviews. Declined every invitation to speak at commemorations. She had done her duty. Led humanity through its darkest hour. Brought them to the other side intact. Now she wanted peace. But peace was complicated for someone who had lived 288 years. Who had spent most of that time preparing for war. Who had seen and done things that would haunt her until her last breath. She spent her days gardening. An odd hobby for someone living in space, but therapeutic. Growing things. Nurturing life. Balancing the scales in her own small way. She had taken so much life, even if justly. Now she created it where she could. Young humans sought her out sometimes. Officers from the fleet. Descendants of Ghost Protocol families. They wanted to thank her. Wanted to understand how she carried the weight. How she made the impossible decisions. She told them all the same thing. That she was not special. Not uniquely strong or brave. She simply did what needed to be done because no one else would. That any of them could have done the same. Most did not believe her. Saw her as a legend. A hero. She hated that. Heroes were simple. Clear. She had been neither. She had made choices that still woke her in the night. Had ordered actions that saved billions but damned her soul. She was not a hero. She was a survivor. And survival was never clean. The galaxy's children told new stories now. The old myths about council wisdom were being replaced. New tales spread through schools and homes across thousands of worlds. Stories about the Ghost Fleet. About Admiral Vasquez. About humanity's patience. About species working together to defeat tyranny. The stories were not entirely accurate. Legends never were. But they carried truth in their core. They taught that power without accountability led to evil. That silence in the face of injustice was complicity. That courage meant standing up even when the cost was everything. Young beings across the galaxy heard these stories. Absorbed these lessons. Grew up with different values than their parents. Values that might prevent another council from rising. Elena received a message one morning. From deep space. Coordinates that did not match any known system. The signal was weak. Fragmentary. But one word translated clearly. Help. She stared at the message for a long time. Part of her wanted to delete it. She had given enough. Sacrificed enough. Earned the right to rest. But she knew herself too well. Knew that she could never ignore a call for help. Could never stop being the person who stepped forward when needed. She sighed. Opened a communication channel. Contacted the Federation. Contacted old crew members. People who had served with her during the Silent War. Most had retired like her. found peace in small corners of the galaxy. But when she called, they answered. Always answered. Because some bonds could not be broken. Some duties never ended. Within a week, a small fleet assembled. Not the massive armada from before. Just 12 ships. Volunteers. Experienced crews who knew what they were signing up for. Elena stood on the bridge of her new flagship. Smaller than her old command ship. More comfortable. Less intimidating. She looked at the crew. Saw humans and Draxians and Vexalians and a dozen other species. All working together. All willing to fly into the unknown because someone needed help. She thought about how far the galaxy had come. How much had changed. How much blood and sacrifice it took to get here. But it was worth it. Every loss. Every nightmare. Every choice that haunted her. Worth it to see species cooperating like this. To see a galaxy that chose compassion over fear. She gave the order. The fleet jumped to hyperspace. Heading toward coordinates unknown. Toward whatever crisis awaited. The Ghost Fleet was gone. The war was over. But the work continued. Would always continue. Because evil never truly died. It just waited for vigilance to lapse. For good people to look away. Elena would not look away. Could not. Would not rest as long as there were people who needed defending. She was 288 years old. She was tired. But she was not done. The galaxy still needed guardians. Still needed people willing to stand in the darkness so others could live in the light. She smiled as the stars stretched into lines. Felt purpose flowing back into her bones. This was who she was. Not a hero. Not a legend. Just someone who showed up when needed. And the galaxy would always need someone. The new dawn had arrived. But dawn was just the beginning. The real work happened in the light that followed. And Elena Vasquez would be there for all of it. Until her last breath. Until the job was done. Until the galaxy was truly safe. The fleet disappeared into the void. Heading toward an unknown crisis. Ready to face whatever came. Because that was what they did. What they would always do. The ghosts had saved the galaxy once. Now they would protect it. Forever vigilant. Forever ready. Forever standing between civilization and chaos. The new dawn was bright. But it needed defenders. And the defenders were ready.